Tommy Pham called his former teammates lazy. Is that why the Mets were terrible this year? We'll discuss that and more on today's edition of Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Today's episode is brought to you by birddogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB or enter promo code LockedOnMLB for a free water bottle with any order. You won't want to take your bird dogs off. We promise you that. Now, today, the biggest news around the New York Mets outside of the Rumble Ponies going to the championship series was an article written by The Athletic that tried to detail what happened to this Mets team this year. It was titled How the $445 Million Mets Crashed and Burned. And there was one big quote that really stole the show from Tommy Pham, talking about his teammates were lazy. But we'll get to that. The story opens up on the series against the Detroit Tigers, where the Mets get swept. Remember, this is when Scherzer comes off his suspension, Verlander off his injury. It was a turning point in the season, you thought, where, all right, the aces will end up rallying together and this season will get on track because the Mets are paying these two guys $86 million, and it's a team that was supposed to be too big to fail. Well, they end up getting swept. They, have a terrible June. And the article talks about Pete Alonso was pulling Buck Showalter aside in his office to just apologize for his terrible performance. And as Tommy Pham said in the article, the Mets had a effing terrible June, which we all know they went 7-19. Pham has all of the big quotes as he really has been vocal since leaving the New York Mets. In the article, it says he respected Lindor's accountability as a leader, how he worked hard, never placed blame on others. Pham says he told Lindor, quote, out of all the teams I played on, this is the least hardest working group of position players I've ever played with. Wow. And that single quote did get taken out of context because all of a sudden we saw, WFAN, amongst other places, pinning that quote in the laziness, so to speak, on Lindor, Alonso, and Nimmo, where if you simply read the article, which I understand, it's behind a paywall, really rough for some people to get that subscription to The Athletic. It says, in further explaining his comment later, he added that he held a lot of respect for the work ethics of team leaders Lindor, Alonso, and Brandon Nimmo. Those guys, as leaders, if they're hard workers, you would hope that would pass on to the rest of the club. Brandon Nimmo discusses it, saying in the article, each person needs to assess that individually, said of the club's work ethic. You can only lead a horse to water. You can't make him drink. Ultimately, a lot of this comes down to individuals and what they're willing to do. So, if the Mets were lazy, and it's specifically the position players, Tommy Pham's not calling himself lazy. He's not calling Lindor, Alonso, or Nimmo lazy. So who could be lazy? Who could be, again, back to the quote, the least hardest working group of position players I've ever played with? Well, Brett Beatty, Francisco Alvarez, Mark Vientos, part of this team at spurts. Beatty and Alvarez the whole year. Vientos was the one who was up and down. Those are kids. I don't think that Tommy Pham would have been pinpointing those guys, especially when Francisco Alvarez has been heralded for his work ethic. And I just find it hard to believe that Beatty and Vientos, who are trying to get their footing, would have been part of a lazy group. So who are the other veterans that could be lazy? Mark Canha, a guy that Tommy Pham was in direct competition with for playing time. Starling Marte, another guy he was in direct competition with for playing time. Jeff McNeil, Daniel Vogelback, Eduardo Escobar, Louis Guillorme, were those the lazy players? It certainly feels like Jeff McNeil would be in that bunch based on his counter in the story. Quote, guys are super professional around here. We go about our business. Everybody comes ready to play and does what they need to do. Here's the thing. When you lose, the clubhouse chemistry usually erodes, and that's when people point fingers. Tommy Pham is pointing a lot of fingers, and rightfully so in the sense that he was not the problem for the New York Mets. Although his numbers weren't great early on in the season when the team was playing well, ironically enough, and then when he hit, the rest of the team didn't. I'm not blaming Tommy Pham. Of course, he was hitting, no one else was, but it's not like he was always a model of consistency. He got great down the stretch, but throwing his former teammates under the bus and blaming them for what happened to the Mets, I think ultimately it's a little bit short-sighted. And really, I think the pitching is as much to blame as anything else. I mean, the position player group, have they been great all year? Absolutely not. But I don't know if it's laziness that led to Starling Marte being a shell of himself this year. If anything, I think it's a double groin surgery that he clearly never healed from and was never right with all year. Jeff McNeil, what was it? Was it a guy who was lazy? Or is it a guy who went to the World Baseball Classic, was supposed to be the man, lost his job as the starter on that team, did still play a role, but remember, it became Trey Turner and Tim Anderson up the middle. McNeil ended up getting relegated. Maybe lost some confidence there. I don't know. But he struggled in the early part of the season. He's come around lately, but come around in games that didn't matter. I don't know. I'm not going to pin the entire season on him. The article wants to point to Edwin Diaz. It talks about the World Baseball Classic, and I do think that was a big part of what happened to the Mets this season. They also discuss how the rule changes that came into effect, the Mets didn't have as much time to get ready because they didn't have a typical spring training. We've heard Buck Showalter comment on that as well, how he wasn't able to get his team ready the same way he would have wanted to because they didn't have time. As much as you want to blame the World Baseball Classic, Brandon Nimmo points out in the article that the Mets got off to a good start. They had a great West Coast trip early in the season. They were 14-7 through their first 21 games. Here's more what I look at. Edwin Diaz being out, yes, big part of it. Verlander and Quintana being out at the beginning of the season, Quintana the whole first half, massive blows. Max Scherzer being inconsistent, having the suspension, having the little injuries where he was, having to pitch through stuff, giving up a ton of home runs. That killed him. Peterson McGill being awful. All of that contributed. Here was the bigger thing for me, though. Again, they started 14-7. You look at April 22nd to the end of June. The New York Mets went from 14-7 to 36-46. They went from 7 games over to 10 games under. They went 22-39 in that span of, 61 games. 17 games under in 61 games. During that span, Pete Alonso and Francisco Lindor, they each got on base at a sub-300 clip in that span when the Mets were horrible. Tommy Pham applauded their work ethic. But guess what? Those two guys in key spots in your lineup not getting on base at even 30% of the time kills you. Jeff McNeil hit 249, 301 on base, 309 slug. He had a 73 WRC plus. Again, WRC plus is weighted runs created plus, measures hitters based on a league average of 100. So Jeff McNeil was 27% worse than your league average hitter. Starling Marte hit 262, 298 on base, 327 slug, a 75 WRC plus, 25% worse than your league average hitter. Daniel Vogelback, 207 average, 299 on base, 347 slug, and 81 WRC plus. Got nothing from guys like Narvaez and Nito as the backup catchers. The guys that did hit during that span was Tommy Pham, Francisco Alvarez. Brandon Nimmo was still solid. Not great, but still, he had a 115 WRC plus, so he was still above average. And Mark Canha was slightly above average during that point of the season when the Mets were a disaster. Can you point to some laziness from some of those guys that were performing? You can, but again, when you look at Alonso and Lindor, if they're not lazy, they also just weren't producing. And as Pete Alonso went to Buck Showalter and apologized for his horrible performance in June. That certainly helped crater a team that, again, went 7-19 that month. The bigger thing, though, in that same time period we're talking about, a 61-game stretch of the season where the Mets blew it. Tyler McGill led the team in starts along with Kodai Senga during that span. They both made 11 starts. Senga, 3.26 ERA. Not the problem. McGill, 6.08 ERA in 11 starts. Killed you. Max Scherzer in 10 starts. 3.96 ERA. Justin Verlander in 10 starts. 4.11 ERA. Your two aces pitching combined to an ERA over 4. Kills you. Carlos Carrasco, 8 starts. 5.03 ERA. David Peterson, 5 starts. 7.77 ERA. Joey Lucchesi, overall this season, has had good numbers. And the 4 starts he made, though, in that span, even he had a 6.46 ERA. And then you look at the top arms out of the bullpen, the guys who pitched the most. Jeff Brigham led the bullpen innings pitched during that span, 27 1/3 innings, 4.61 ERA. David Robertson was second, 26 2/3 innings pitched. He had a 2.36 ERA. He was not the problem. Adam Ottavino, 24 2/3 innings pitched, 4.74 ERA. Dominic Leone, 22 2/3 innings pitched. If you're watching on YouTube, you see a smile across my face because here's a guy who, in that worst stretch of the season for the Mets, pitched a bunch, pitched to a 5.16 ERA, and they got a top 30 prospect in the system, maybe a top 20 prospect in Jeremiah Jackson now from the Angels. Amazing. Brooks Raley was good. 1.83 ERA and nearly 20 innings pitched. Steven Nogasek, 19 1/3 innings pitched, 6.52 ERA. Tommy Hunter, 18 2/3, 6.27 ERA. Drew Smith, 18 innings pitched, 5.50 ERA. I'm sorry it wasn't lazy position players. While the position players weren't great, it was the pitching that was god-awful for that 61-game stretch. That cratered them as much as the lineup did. And I imagine that what happens is when your pitching puts you in holes constantly. Alonso and Lindor, they're not lazy, but they certainly were pressing. Marte was banged up. Jeff McNeil pressing. Daniel Vogelback looking over his shoulder at Mark Vientos. And you see what Vientos is doing now. Not to say that he wasn't bad, but man, imagine if you gave him consistent playing time when you called him up originally and you just rode with him. Maybe what you're seeing now, 6 home runs in his last 18 games, maybe that happens in July instead of in September. And who knows? Maybe that changed your season a little bit. So there's a lot of things you can point to. The bottom line is no one's ever going to know. This was just a disaster of a season for the New York Mets. And with that, it's time to move on and talk about the Binghamton Rumble Ponies who advanced to the championship series. That's where we should go from this because it's time to just flush everything that happened this year and move on to the future. Before we get to that, though, today's episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Bird Dogs make you look good with stretch khaki shorts that are designed to fit slimmer through the leg and thigh, giving you a truly sculpted look. Bird Dog shorts fit way better than regular shorts that are made of the stiff, restricting cotton. Instead, they fix the issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki, but stretches so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. Bird Dogs use anti-sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long and doesn't smell. It's great. You can wear your Bird Dogs everywhere. The thing I love about Bird Dogs is versatility. Wear it on the golf course, wear it out to dinner, wear it to church, wear it at home watching the football games on Sunday because you can relax in it and feel comfortable. If you want to try Bird Dogs today, go to birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB or enter the promo code LockedOnMLB for a free Bird Dogs water bottle with every order. That's birddogs.com LockedOnMLB or promo code LockedOnMLB for a free water bottle at checkout. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. Promise you that. Today's show is also brought to you by DoorDash. Love the convenience of getting what you want right to your door? Now DoorDash has grocery delivery where you can stock up for the week or order last-minute cravings conveniently. You trusted DoorDash to deliver your restaurant favorites. Now you can trust them for your groceries. With thousands of grocery stores to choose from, you'll find the best in your neighborhood and boost your local economy with each and every order. If you want even more value, you can save on all of your grocery and restaurant favorites with a $0 delivery fee on all eligible orders with a Dash Pass membership. With easy substitutions right in the app and best-in-class customer service, DoorDash delivers groceries exactly how you want it. You'll get a 50% off your first DoorDash order up to $25 value when you use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB at checkout. It's a limited time offer. Terms apply. Again, that's 50% off up to $20, no minimum subtotal, and zero in delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app in the App Store. Enter the code LOCKEDONMLB. Don't forget, that's code LOCKEDONMLB for 50% off your first order with DoorDash. The Binghamton Rumble Ponies are advancing to the championship series thanks to an outstanding pitching performance by Dominic Hamel. He allowed just 3 hits and 2 walks over 7 2/3 of scoreless work, struck out 8. Paul Gervais came in, got the last 4 outs, struck out 2 of them. 2 of the 4 outs that he got did not allow a hit or a walk. This guy looks like a potential bullpen arm for the Mets in the future here. He's 6'10", has 96 strikeouts and 57 innings pitched this year. So that's really impressive. But here your Rumble Ponies are. They have advanced. And you look at the offense in this game, they won 2-0. Hayden Sanger was the hitter that really delivered. This is the catcher that's starting over Kevin Parada in these games thanks to his defense. He actually won the Platinum Glove in the organization. So you're looking at a guy in Sanger that could be a future backup catcher for the New York Mets. Tomas Nido still in the organization. You have Omar Narvaez, both of those guys for another year. Sanger could be Alvarez's backup in 2025, honestly, if he sticks around the organization. So he got a hit in the 3rd inning. Rylan Thomas ended up doubling him to 3rd. And then Luis Angel Acuna got a sacrifice fly, which ultimately proved to be the winning run, although Sanger homered in the 5th inning as well. So a great team victory. But again, the overall story of the game was Dominic Hamel. And this guy has been lights out in September, has not allowed a run in now 21 2/3 innings pitched, has 32 strikeouts over that span, allowed just 8 hits. And you look at what he's done since July. This is a guy that got off to a good start, really struggled for a couple of months where he pitched to an ERA over 6. And then when the calendar turned to July, he settled down. Over his last 13 starts since July, he's pitched to a 2.19 ERA over 70 innings pitched with 88 strikeouts. His strikeout per 9 at 11.31 during that span, and walk per 9 at 4.11. You'd like to see the walk come down a little bit, but with the strikeouts that he's getting, it's okay. And then you look at the home run per 9, 0.39, has not been giving up the long ball that has helped him keep that ERA so low. And now he's going to get to pitch probably in this championship series. It's going to begin in Binghamton on Sunday against the Erie Seawolves, the AA affiliate of the Tigers. Blade Tidwell was going to start game 3 if it was necessary. Now, I think he probably gets the ball in game 1 on Sunday. Dominic Hamel theoretically could start game 2. Christian Scott is probably an option on Sunday if the Mets wanted to go to him again. They could. They could pitch him in relief if they wanted to. They could hold on to him for a potential game 3. A lot of options for the Rumble Ponies at this point, but really exciting to see this AA affiliate with so much talent steamroll through the Yankees affiliate and advance to a championship series here. And if they win it, at least some team in the organization had some success. And it's a team that, I had the original Locked On Binghamton Rumble Ponies episode after the deadline where you look at what happened to them at the trade deadline, and it was almost like a team that was trading for a championship push because of all the talent that they had from the Mets being sellers. And so to see it all come to fruition, for them to make it to the playoffs and now win a series, it's going to be fun to watch them go at it again and really see what these pitchers can do in big time games. I mean, you watched, if you were watching MLB.tv and we're following along as they won, these guys are fired up to win this game. The playoffs do mean something in the minor leagues for these guys. And it'll be good to see them go out there and try to take this thing home. So I think that's the most exciting baseball we're going to watch here over the final, whatever it is, week and a half of this 2023 season. But the Mets are still playing the Phillies. They have a chance to be spoilers this weekend, although It did not get off to a good foot on Thursday night. I'll discuss that game in a minute. Before we do, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props. So if you want to bet on Pete Alonso to hit a home run this weekend, Francisco Lindor now has the 30 stolen bases. Can he come alive in Citizens Bank Park? That's his best chance to get to the 30 home runs. He needs a couple of home runs this weekend. He just does. And then if he goes into that homestand sitting at 28, maybe Lindor can pull it off. It's looking like the odds are longer and longer on that one, but we'll see what happens. Along with the spreads, the player props, you can bet on over-unders and more. And the New York Jets are playing the Patriots on Sunday. They're 2.5-point underdogs, despite the fact that they're playing that game at home. Obviously, without Aaron Rodgers starting at quarterback, that's going to reflect in the Jets' odds on a lot of these games moving forward. But the Patriots are 0-2. So if you're a Jets fan, you believe that your team's going to win this weekend, you can even bet on the money line as your team's an underdog. And again, bet $5, you unlock that $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. So that's a good opportunity. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. The New York Mets play the Philadelphia Phillies at 7:05 Eastern time on Friday night. Catch every pitch in the Mets hometown broadcast with SiriusXM, the SXM app. Just search Mets. Now, David Peterson was not great against the Phillies on Thursday night. He walked the first two batters he faced, then eventually gave up a hit to Nick Castellanos, who just killed the Mets in this game. That scored both of those walks. But the Mets, they tied it up. On top of the second, Francisco Lindor leads off the inning with a single, then stole second base. Jeff McNeil hits a double. He had a big game, went 3 for 4, was a home run away from the cycle. No, that's always the hardest one to get. Either that or the triple. The triple came for McNeil in the 4th inning, which he would score on a sacrifice fly by Francisco Alvarez. He also scored in that 2nd inning on a single from Brett Beatty. Peterson, though, could not hold the lead. 3rd inning, gives up a home run to Alec Boehm, if I'm not mistaken. Then gives up a pair of hits before Nick Castellanos gets another RBI, this one on a sacrifice fly. Altogether, Peterson made it through 4 innings, allowed 4 runs on 5 hits and 2 walks, did get 7 strikeouts, did still show the flashes of the great stuff that has me believing in this guy, even though he disappoints me at every single turn. But the Mets got a run back on that triple from McNeil, and then in the 6th inning, they tied it up because Mark Vientos has been red hot. He had a home run. 6th home run in his last 18 games. The tie was short-lived, though, because Nick Castellanos completed his great game where he had 4 RBIs by hitting a home run. His 28th of the season in the bottom of the 6th. And ultimately, that decided the game. As I sit here, wrapping up a week of Locked On Mets, there's still more I want to discuss because originally today I wanted to do a show about how the Phillies have cut in line with the New York Mets. They weren't supposed to be the team that was challenging the Braves, yet they went to the World Series last year. And you know what? They look like as good of a threat that the Braves have right now in the National League. Because you look at the Dodgers rotation compared to the Phillies rotation, they got to take the Phillies. You look at the Brewers, sure, they certainly have the rotation to compete with the Braves. But I don't know if they have the lineup. The Phillies have a lineup, and they have enough pitching in that rotation, with Zach Wheeler, by the way, headlining that rotation, that they are, again, a legitimate threat here. And I really want to spend some time. I think I'm even writing an article about this for Just Baseball. Just how did this happen? How did the Phillies cut in line? And is it going to take a long time for the Mets to catch up to the Phillies now? That's the thing that is just puzzling to me, because we even went into this year, despite the Phillies going to the World Series, thinking the Mets were a better team because they won 101 games in the larger sample size of the season. And now you certainly can't say that. The Phillies, head and shoulders, have been a better team the last 2 years now, without a doubt. And they're going to go into next season, I would think, still being considered the better team until the Mets prove otherwise. So I'm going to do a show about this on Saturday based on the article I write. Also, as I'm writing the article, there is a really exciting new thing we're tying into the show, something that Locked On's doing now. We've partnered with Subtext. This is a way that you can get text from me personally. So if you want to sign up, the description is in, or the sign up, the URL is in the description of the show today, and it's a 2-week free trial that is $4.99 a month, where I will be sending out subtext throughout the day. It'll be, some of my comments during the game. I'll probably be using subtext more than Twitter now. When I see something during the game, I might send a subtext. If I'm working on something, I have an interesting stat, you might get that through subtext. And if you have any questions for me at any time, you can reach out to me via subtext. So it's a really cool new feature that is going to take the Locked On Mets insiders who have been tuning in every single day and give you just another little element of continued coverage on the show. So I really do appreciate everyone who signs up and follows the extra coverage I'm providing at Subtext. And also for all you everydayers, again, a really fun show, I think, just on what's happened between the Mets and the Phillies over the last couple of years, how the Phillies got to this place, and a look ahead to where these franchises are going now, and how the Phillies are a team that, is to be reckoned with for a while. A lot of these guys are locked up for some years now, and so they have a core that is to be reckoned with. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Follow me on Twitter, Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. And if you want to catch every pitch to the Mets hometown broadcast this weekend, again, you can do so with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Mets.